brutally honest. Like, I've talked to officials like, I've said, man, I think they throwing y'all under the bus with that 2-minute report. And they're like, man, it's crazy. But this one, they reviewed all the calls and non-calls in the last 2 minutes, of course, and said they were all correct. So I'm just not one to blame this on Scott Foster or the officiating in general.
So, listen, I thought I had said on Miami on Friday, I said I thought this has been an excellently officiated series. I did not think Game 4 was excellently officiated. I also didn't think one team greatly benefited over the other. I just heavy whistle is a great way to put it. And I thought sometimes you see guys, like I thought them calling the first flagrant a flagrant was a mistake, which then almost made it to where they had to call the second one a flagrant. I thought neither was a flagrant. I didn't like that. There were various things I did not like. I also do not have, I guess, the sympathy for Scott Foster that Rick Carlisle does, because this is an example of something I think is a big difference between the NBA and the NFL, and I think the NFL does better. The NFL would never allow a celebrity ref, and the NBA always has, and now it's in a bad way. The closest thing to a celebrity ref in the NFL was Hockey Lee for being jacked. Yeah. And it was nothing about how he calls games. It was just he wears tight shirts and he's jacked. Right. That's it. Here's the truth on Scott Foster. It is true. He is one of the longest tenured officials and consistently one of the highest graded. Yeah. He gets more playoff assignments and
18 finals.
Finals. And every year, Monty McCutcheon and the league office grades officials. He does really well. It is also true that you have had multiple high-level NBA players, most notably Chris Paul, flatly say, that guy has it out for me, and it's unfair and personal. He also, and people can read this however they want, he and Tim Donaghy, they're godfathers of each other's kids. So they were super close. And so he had cast a shadow over him that when Donaghy got in trouble, it was like, hey, the only person he called more than his bookie was Scott Foster. Now that's, I think, totally reasonable in that they were coworkers and true friends, but that existed, like that, narrative. So then when you add to all of that, Scott Foster and I guess, I don't know if it's the ESPN crew, the NBA crew, who decided a couple years ago, hey, what if we put out a music video about, what's the guy's name? Jack Harlow. Jack Harlow, and post this, and it's Scott Foster doing
referee.
The referee celebrity walk-in thing that they then put out, and then it's them in a car bouncing their heads to Jack Harlow.
It doesn't really work without the music, which we couldn't clear.
I understand, but my point is this.
Like
it doesn't.
Is that he's rapping?
They're listening. So there was mic'd up of him saying, Jack Harlow's here. Who's Jack Harlow?
That's what it was.
And so then they produced this of him. Except this, he shouldn't be a celebrity. And so if he's already called the extender, if fans fairly or unfairly remember the Donaghy stuff, and if there's someone who's like a minted, veteran, respected voice in Chris Paul that says, hey, he's biased, and then you draw more attention to yourself, that to me is, it feeds into fans thinking, oh, if Scott Foster's there, he's going to have a heavy whistle.
Well, he does.
He's going to make himself a main character.
He also calls the most fouls, too. He just does like to blow the whistle. And then just off of that point, Tom Haberstroh had a good article today where he listed all the fouls and had Foster calling the most. How that affects gameplay outside of just the free throws and getting people in foul trouble is the rest advantage. And when the rest story, this is Tom Haberstroh's take, not mine, I'm just kind of relaying it. When the rest, storyline was so big for the Thunder, once you get a lot of whistle, and it's like, all right, now we can just chill, and all of a sudden, Game 4 is the game where SGA, and granted his minutes were staggered, but Game 4 is the game that the Thunder were allowed to come back. It all kind of is a dump.
I don't think Scott Foster is biased. I don't think the Tim Donaghy stuff is fair. I do think that when that exists in the ether enough to where he did a whole athletic profile, long profile a couple years ago, it was in the New York Times about Scott Foster, doing things that make it appear like, oh, he wants the attention is not positive for the NBA.
But
we got to leave it there. We've got Trey Hendrickson news that we have to get to. I'm sorry, bro. More on this. Gianna, maybe if we just keep talking, we can put it on the podcast. Well, we got to get to this Trey Hendrickson news, everybody. They've reopened negotiations with Trey Hendrickson. Okay?
Yeah.
Stay tuned. We are your #1 stop for Trey Hendrickson contract talks.